Alrighty, and we're live.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to go over a topic that I think a lot of folks are knee deep in, which are modern data types in eDiscovery. Um, eDiscovery, we're all very familiar with eDiscovery. It's been around a long time. Um, Data changes, of course, and with that comes some modern data types. Now, I'm including modern data types being mobile phone apps, messaging apps, collaborative apps like Teams or Slack. And so we're going to dive into that today and see what happens post collection with these data types and what we can do. Now, I am going to give you a little background on me. I've been in the legal technology space for a few decades now. I am the founder of Index.io, founded it in 2012. It's a legal e-discovery platform for ECA processing, review, all the way through production. Okay, we based out of Colorado. It's beautiful here. It's 70 degrees. So that's a little bit about me. Happy to talk to anyone one-on-one post this if they want to know more. I'm happy to share that information. Index.io, real quick, again, on demand, e-discovery platform, mobile data, collaborative data, traditional e-discovery, all cloud-based, so scalable, fast, cost-effective. So when I'm talking about collaborative data, in modern data, I am going to probably reference smartphones a lot. Just know that it's the same process with this collaborative data like Teams and Slack that it would be for smartphones. Okay, the traditional step for this process is obviously to collect that device or that application software. The forensic company goes in, they either do it remotely or face to face, and they preserve the entire entity of the tablet, phone, or archive data from Slack, Teams, etc. This is really important because it's snapshot in time, right? It doesn't have just the relevant data; it has all the data. And the reason I say that's important is because at some point things may change. Search terms may be broadened. The court may make decisions that require additional information to be reviewed and produced. And you don't want to have to go back to these data types and recollect because they're personal. They are in people's pockets. People delete things. They're harder to control with info governance than, say, a corporate email account or corporate file share. So the forensic part initially should always be accomplished with the entire set, right? You're taking a snapshot of that. That's everything, all the way down to all the bits that can possibly be collected. Now, what we're going to talk about today is post that step. Okay, now we want to get to the data. We want to use the data, and we want to find the relevant data, the privileged data, and ultimately produce it like we would any other regular e-discovery data source. One of the interesting things about mobile phone data is just how prevalent it is in the workspace now. I'm old enough to remember my first mobile phone, and it was a giant brick with a huge antenna that came out of it, and it was very expensive. No text messaging, right? We had a pager system for that just basically said, here's my number, call me. Nowadays, obviously, things have changed, and they will continue to change. One report has 8 billion times per day phones are getting looked at. That's amazing, right? 8 billion times per day. People are sharing information, documents, pictures. It's really the primary communication source of adults right now. Surpassed email and even voice, where folks are 5 times more likely to send a text message than they are to leave a voicemail. So text message obviously is discoverable data, and it's prevalent. So No surprise. People are using using cell phones and they're using them a lot. What's on there? So, do, 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 discoverable data. This is going to be email communications. That it's still an email platform on the phone. Text communications, photographs, voicemails, even call logs and activity. Activity being they were at certain locations, or call logs are when they sent or received, uh, you know, the action. Um, it also, just beyond the phone, is the applications that are on the phone, meaning WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, excuse me, X. Um, all of these components are part of the smartphone environment, and including Slack and Teams. So there's a lot of crossover. Now, the difference between collecting this, and we won't go deep into this, there is a file storage component and a database storage component. So file storage are going to be photos, voicemail files, um, documents that have been downloaded or generated on your phone. The database storage, believe it or not, is more the text and the email contacts that tends to live in database files on the phone, and it needs to be collected and pulled off. And that's really, we're going to focus a lot on the database storage because it traditionally doesn't present itself in a very usable format, right? We've collected it, we preserved it, we now need to access it. And these database storage types can be a real challenge, because you typically don't want to look at a grid view database, um, of this data, more as a DBA view than it is an end user view. Um, the next step, obviously, from collecting that is processing it, and I kind of alluded to these database files not really being in a friendly format. What do we do there? We're going to take that database system, and we're going to actually extract out, just like we would an email, the to, the from, the date, times, subject lines, content, etc. We're going to do the same thing with these collaborative tools and phone data. We're going to pull out the to and the from, and we're going to identify attachments and file types, and categorize subject titles. Where we can also dedupe this system. We're going to process it like traditional eDiscovery. What that does is it gives us the ability then to start looking at it, searching, filtering, and accessing it like traditional eDiscovery. Okay. And then, of course, once we do that processing, how do we access it? How do we view it? And I'm going to show you an example of an application that will show you this phone data. The basics are: you want a viewer, you want to be able to tag it, make notes, redact it, search, call it, filter it. Some of the more advanced stuff would be foreign language handling capabilities, document clustering or machine learning AI capabilities, audit logs, analytical tools, things that help you get your arms wrapped around bigger sets of data. So the basics: can I look at it? Can I tag it? Can I use it? Uh, can I search and filter it down to the relevant stuff? Advanced is more, hey, there's tricky elements of this data, like it's foreign language, or maybe it's audio that I want to transcribe into searchability, things like that. And I'm going to show you examples of these. The basics probably most of the time are going to get users across the finish line, because hey, right now they're opening these up in spreadsheets and looking at them brute force. But obviously the advanced components are really where things go and develop and make life easier for the end user. The ultimate product of this is a production or a deliverable. So just like you would do a bait stamped production of email, Word docs, Excels, files, and regular standalone data, the same can be for these smartphone and collaborative data platforms. You want to be able to either deliver them native, an image with Bates numbers, tracking information, metadata, ideally in collaboration with your existing eDiscovery data. But sometimes it can be separate as a separate package. Hey, this is the phone data. This process obviously is the finish line for most of this workflow. We've done all the collection, we reviewed it, we tagged it, we redacted the things we need, and then ultimately identified relevancy, and we're going to export out that set of data for production to delivery to the other side, or however we need to utilize it for our case. Okay, now real high overview with this PowerPoint. I'm actually going to show you some examples of what I'm talking about as we go post collection, and how do we actually interface with some of these data types. So let me toggle over to a platform that I can show you here. This is our platform here, Index.io. It's going to give you the ability to ingest, and I'm just going to log in here, ingest phone data, as well as view it. Oops, let me pull up the right password. There we go. To be able to ingest it from the collection software itself through production. Okay. So let's just jump in here and show you an example. For instance, I'm going to go to add data to this project. We'll give it a custodian name. We're going to say that it's, Brian, October 23 iPhone, and then we browse to that set of data. This is important because you want a platform that obviously can handle multiple file types, because you are collecting with one of these tools, or you have your data collected with one of these tools, but that may change depending on region. You have a custodian that's in another state or another country, and boots on the ground there are using a different platform. You want to be able to support all of them simultaneously. You're going to ingest and start processing this data, and then once that data is processed, you're going to be able to come in and actually view what's in there. So traditionally, before I go in here, I do want to show you that I'm just gonna I am going to share my screen. I'm going to share another app. Hopefully this pulls up. There we go. This is how traditionally these platforms and these data types are reviewed. They're reviewed in a grid format, Excel. Conversations are linked one after another with their content to and from. You can flag them, do whatever. It becomes really difficult to manage this in your legal case, because I want to separate out, maybe these conversations and deliver them for production, but they're in the middle of all this other stuff in one giant file. This is what we're solving here. We really don't like this kind of layout and interface, because it's just so burdensome on the end reviewer. This is not a natural environment to be reviewing text messages or collaborative chats. It's also difficult to display these back to the end user, because when you show them this information, you say, hey, is this familiar? Well, of course, the first thing they're going to say is, no, it's not familiar, because it's a spreadsheet and not their phone data. So what we've done is, if we've actually pulled all that information in, and we now display it like you would regular phone data. Okay. Now, there are other tools out there. Highly recommend going with one that does have this functionality. Okay. There's lots of efficiencies to this. One, everyone's familiar with this. I think it's 98% of adults have cell phones, which means they understand what's happening on this visual. There's a conversation between the person on the left, or persons on the left, and the person on the right. Okay, as they scroll through, they see the conversations listed on the left, and they can understand quickly the work or the timing and the format of this data as it goes from beginning to the end of the conversation. Okay. There's the zero training here. So when attorneys and reviewers hit this, they understand exactly what they're seeing. And that's the important part. Now, there's one thing to be able to just access it like a phone. But if I'm looking for something specific, you do want searching and filtering capabilities. So if I search for the word honey, it should pop up everything that has that word in it. If we click in it, there is an individualized chat, but if you click the little viewer, we're right back where we need to be in the phone, and it highlights itself And now we can scroll above and say, you know, really, this conversation started here and it really ended down below here. I can now snip that. I can now snip that selected message, and it pulls this conversation out as an extracted conversation. Okay, now why is that important? It's important because when I'm presenting this or I'm producing this, I'm just going to show you an example here. It now can be bait numbered and managed alongside my own, my other eDiscovery. Anytime you're doing a snippet, it's going to have all the phone data up here, serial numbers, key IDs, all the source information. It's going to be here available. So chain of custody is very clear as to what this conversation was extracted from. It's also clearly labeled extracted conversation. As I scroll down through here, the bubbles make sense. You present this to anyone on your case, if you're doing a deposition or presenting this to someone on the stand, to a witness, they're going to clearly understand what this conversation is, right? Because this looks familiar. This is phone data. Now, I do pick on this particular set of data because, as you see here, we have an audio file that is carved out into this conversation. Not very presentable in this step. It is important that whatever system you go with maintains the original embedded data of these conversations. Someone, you know, pictures, audio, video files. If I sent someone a contract via text, I want that information to be the original, not just a thumbnail of it. So in our particular platform, when you do make these snippets and you happen to include these attachments or embedded items, it automatically pulls them out as related items. So now I have that actual audio or video file. I have that actual image file that was included in there. And that's important because it obviously is going to have its own metadata. It's going to have its own properties that I want to preserve. You know, this was taken with an iPhone 6 on whatever specific date, time, even longitude, latitude coordinates in this instance with phone data. It's all preserved. And you saw there, as an end user, which is really what we're focusing on here, it was amazingly easy for me to go to that conversation, select, you know, the segment of that conversation that I found was important, and create that snippet. The other important component to this that I'll point out here is that once you have your snippets, it, like I said, can be exported and managed along with all of your other eDiscovery production data. So it's not a separate platform. It's not a separate technology. You really want to manage this in one spot, because when I'm searching for the word honey, I don't want to just find documents that have, you know, text messages. I want to find emails. I want to find audio files that have been transcribed. I want to find, you know, phone texts, Slack messages, Teams messages. I want to find all of that, so that as my reviewers are going through and managing the review and determining relevancy and privilege and what have you, they're not jumping around learning multiple platforms. They're not jumping around, you know, separating data and processing things in different environments. It's all in one spot that could be managed and clearly managed, if you will, from start to finish. Okay. Now, I pulled up this phone data collection, and it's important to kind of pull in here. Slack data and Teams data and some of the other, you know, collaborative tools, they're going to have the same conversation categorization. They're really the same format, where you have a channel, for instance, in Slack, and then all of the members that are in that particular channel, their conversations back and forth with their information, user information, date, time, attachments, etc. It's going to be the same viewer. Again, easy to train, easy to use, and ultimately easy to produce. There are advanced features in here where you can actually run bulk search terms. So, you know, hey, I want to auto snippet this stuff. I don't want to go through and do snippets one at a time. There are tools in here that can create those for you. The real component is the continuous active learning, where you could actually configure this to say anytime, I tag something privileged, go find things that are, similar contextually to it and tag them as potentially privileged. It's not as relevant or maybe critical on smaller collections of data, maybe a single phone, but when you're talking about projects that have dozens of phones or more, and hundreds of gigs, terabytes of data, all of these tools add up into make an efficient workflow. That's the other key reason of having this component, have this data component in the same area environment as your other data sources and components, is because you don't want to leverage all of that benefit isolated in a silo and then have to redo it in another spot. It really consolidates that workflow so that you're doing those searches one time, you're doing that review one time, and then ultimately you're doing a single production. Okay. As we're going through here, we're going to tag privilege, relevancy, etc. And ultimately, we're going to come out the other side for production. So I am going to jump to that piece here. We're going to go to exports. We're going to say add export. It's super easy. We're going to call this export October 23. We're going to select our collections. Today, I'm just going to say, give me everything that's responsive. You can see all my items here. I can do a quick QC. Did I forget to remove dupes? Do I want to exclude them or not? If I'm happy with that, next. And then what can I take? Today we're taking PDFs, we're taking text, and we'll do some placeholders for spreadsheets. If you're producing for other platforms like Relativity, etc., there's built-in workflows for that. So for instance, if I'm taking TIFFs and their color, we all know Relativity doesn't like color TIFFs, it likes JPEG color. So great, we're going to configure that to make sure it's going to output the way you need it for ultimately its destination, be it your internal platform or the opposing counsel's requirements. Preset load files, DOJ, SEC, basic production. You can customize it however you want, carving out specific tags or populating specific fields. Base numbering, pretty straightforward. Give it a prefix, give it a start value, and how many paddings you want on that. And then obviously you want to base number this. Traditionally you base number it, not all the time, but we do default with base numbers on. You can turn that off. You can static endorse this with like confidential and or utilize a tag. Confidential. If it has confidential tag, it'll be endorsed. If it doesn't, not. This is all configurable depending on your end requirements. You could just want the natives exported, for instance. Great. You'd go back and instead of PDFs, you would select natives. The last bit is a QC screen. I'm about to export X, Y, and Z at these settings. You hit start export, and it'll run through and export this out, ultimately giving you a link to download this material when it's ready for delivery. Okay. Now, some of the other things that I want to touch base here, they are one-off data points. For instance, we were presented with a case that needed to collect Zendesk. I don't know if you're familiar with Zendesk, but Zendesk is a support application, a support ticketing application. So it basically allows users to support or send support requests like, hey, I need help searching, or I need help building an account, or I need help with whatever the support need is. These systems, and I'm picking on Zendesk because it was the most recent, but there are a lot of systems out there that are not meant to really be exported, right? They're not meant to be viewed in any other format than either maybe a very single specific incident, like a PDF printout, or within the application themselves, right? They're self-managed. You need to log in to Zendesk to leverage the information in there. It is important that as you're collecting this forensic data that you explore those data types, because those tend to require custom workflows. They require custom collection. They require custom processing. They require, custom review workflows, and even concessions on production. So, what would be a concession on productions? Um, it may not look exactly like how it does if they print it from their own software, but it has all of the necessary information displayed in a usable format. That's a concession. Um, what we typically see in an industry is over time, we work on those concessions and we dial those concessions back into whatever, ultimately our expectations are. But I bring up Zendesk because it's often our industry's approach to kind of bury our head in the sand a bit with some of these data types. They are burdensome. I'm not dismissing that or minimizing that. Therefore, there is a real cost element to it, and why you may or may not want to pursue those data elements. But I think more and more as these cloud-based systems and what I call collaborative systems are very isolated in how they're utilized, it becomes more and more important to get a game plan around how you're going to collect that data, how you're going to preserve that data, and then ultimately how you're going to process, search, review, and produce that data. For instance, we utilized a very custom collection. We worked with one of our forensic channel partners. We helped them develop some code that actually collects the Zendesk uh, data via their own APIs. It's very systematic. It's very defensible. It was an elegant solution that can be easily explained to the other side or to the court. Um, it took that information and formatted it in a way that our system could ingest it. What does that mean? It means it wasn't necessarily raw JSON or XML, some of these raw data formats that these platforms use natively. It was able to pull them out as like rich text or other usable formats. Once that we kind of were able to cross that bridge and it's in the platform, it obviously then is open to all the other functionality within here, the search, the filtering, redaction, tagging, all the analytics that are available as well, the to, the from, date times, account numbers, all that fun stuff. Ultimately producing to the out the end that formatted data. Now, Zendesk is a new data type that folks are kind of just now getting more familiar with, as far as like, hey, do you have a support ticketing system? We should look at that because that may have information about a particular client or group of clients or parties. And I use that as one example, right? There are many examples out there of these non-traditional or modern data types that do need a very customized workflow. And like I said, the industry takes that customized workflow over time and makes it an integrated workflow, right? The way I always described it is if we've done this once in 10 years, we're probably not going to make a button for it, right? We would just handle it the same way. You would use that custom solution. But if you're doing it once a day, it becomes integrated into your solution because the need is there, right? The demand is there. There's a precedence of needing this solution. So we work strongly with our channel partners, which are usually forensic companies that are in the trenches collecting this data, to help identify edge cases like Zendesk or some of these platforms that maybe don't get collected as frequently, all the way to the more frequently non-supported file types. Right now, I would lump Slack and Teams in there. It's a very kludgy list of solutions out there that support, and I do support in air quotes, these modern data types. They're going to get maybe that data out brute force and have you review it raw and some of these spreadsheet viewers or some of these other kind of slightly modified display viewers. But you really do want to explore all of your options when you're processing and reviewing and searching and calling and producing these, because ultimately the output of this is what is in the legal team's hands. It's what they're interacting with daily. It's what they're interacting with their clients and the opposing parties, as well as what they're entering into evidence within their legal cases. And again, we have seen statistically data that is properly formatted at production tends to have less pushback as far as admissibility, as far as recognition or acceptance from the opposing parties, because they do understand it and they see what it is clearly. And I'll use the spreadsheet versus the bubbles. Again, you show the spreadsheet to someone, there is a hesitancy to say, I understand this, I don't understand this, because it's foreign to them. It's data that isn't represented in its native or kind of usable format or naturally usable format. Whereas the bubbles back and forth, it makes sense because that's exactly how we interact with it on a daily basis. Okay. Just real quick, I will show you some other benefits to processing this data correctly. It does open itself up to usability. I keep talking about searching and filtering. Once you have the ability to access the to and the from, then you're able to pull in that information and utilize it. So for instance, this is anything to or from. I think I'd actually, searched the to field, but this is the chat information. Because this data was properly formatted, I now have access to all the search and capabilities I would, just like as if it were email or Word doc or what have you. If I pull this document up, I can get a snippet of what it looks like. Traditionally, this is what's out there. Everyone compartmentalizes these into individual messages. We didn't like this. It's not practical. It's not what this data really uses, it looks like in real life. That's why we did build the document viewer here, or the chat viewer. I will say, in addition to that, we're also analyzing these messages. So if you look, this was flagged as having potential credit card information, potential information, personal information, because it has this credit card pattern here. It's going to look at Social Security, other PII information will auto be detected within this data, just like it would email or Word docs or any other eDiscovery data sources. Because it was properly processed and ingested, it gives you full access to the individualized record, as well as collectively the conversation and ultimately the source, so the phone. So all of those can be leveraged within your review or your usage for your production purposes. Okay. You get the ability to have communication charts, who's talking to who, and I can quickly jump on those and look at those conversations and dissect them. Again, it's not just the picture of how the bubble's coming on the output, but it's interacting with this data. If I did a snippet and I need to redact this because it has sensitive information in it, great. I can redact this this file. Now when I produce it, it obviously will have a black box with redacted. It re-OCRs it so that text is no longer there. But I'm preserving that extracted conversation because it's important to know that this person did talk to that person at that date time. It just has confidential or privileged information that isn't being shown, right? All of these features become all these features and functionality become available if it's properly processed and ingested into the platform. So the key one, forensic collection. We have to preserve it. We have to take that snapshot and preserve every bit we can of this data. Key two is taking that and processing it in a way that it becomes accessible and usable data to the end user, to the reviewers, to the legal team, the folks that are searching and looking for relevancy and privilege and confidentiality and all of their issues within this data. And then obviously the last part would be the production element, being able to take that data now, produce it in a in a relevant, in a practical manner that is reflective of how it was used in its natural course of business, meaning the bubbles back and forth, right? Everyone loves the bubbles because the bubbles make sense. The bubbles show us exactly what this conversation is, and we immediately identify with this as a conversation from a mobile device or a collaborative tool. It is, about 40 minutes here. I'm kind of wrapping up. I do want to open up some question and answer, and I think I am sharing my face here. Is there any information or questions? I see someone threw a mobile phone at a dog when they were attacked. I can't say we collect that information, but it depends if your video was running. We may be able to pull that out. Let's see.
Hey,
Yeah,
Brian, this is Megan from Cyber Social Hub. We do have some questions for you. I'll start bringing them up on screen so you can
excellent.
read them out.
Excellent.
One
This first question, I don't know if you guys see this, but I'm going to read it out loud because it gives me a time to digest it. It says, is this a program that forensic analysts will use, or are there other programs? Is this a free program for people to play with, or is it a paid version? Those are great questions. One, yes, forensic analysts could and should utilize this program. So it's another tool for our forensic partners to get in and do almost ECA culling and filtering, and then producing that out to their client, the subset from that collected phone. Oftentimes these phones are collected. It's everything. The ultimate client doesn't want everything. They just want everything between these date ranges or to and from these particular parties. This is a tool that forensic analysts can utilize to ingest it, use all of these filtering ECA tools, and ultimately produce it out in a usable format to their client. Now, I will say it could be turned over immediately to your ultimate client as well. So a forensic team could upload, or if you're a law firm, you can upload this data from your forensic team, and then you utilize the ECA tools and the review tools and production tools. There is a free trial. That's the second part of the question. There is a free trial for anyone who wants to kick the tires on this. If you go to our website, which is www.indexed.io, and that's INDEXED.io. It's kind of a weird domain, not .com.io, but there is a free trial there. It'll let you kick the tires, test it out, make sure it works. Obviously, if you decide that it does solve problems for you, then it becomes a paid version, and by default, it's an on-demand. If you use it, you pay for it. If you don't use it, or you're not currently using it, you have no charges. There's no license fees. There's no user fees. 100% free training. We have built-in support with chat. So if you have a user question, you can literally chat with one of our team members, and they'll take care of you. Great questions. Does this system do artifact link analytics between different data sources? It does in a way. And how do I describe that? So we have a lot of machine learning and AI analytics built into the platforms that are going to let us utilize relationships between different data sources. As far as artifact link specific, we honestly, in full transparency, we'd probably have to look at what data sources you're linking between. And if the data itself has the full path, or the information to get to that data source, the short answer is yes. Sometimes what happens is these platforms truncate that data link. So I'm going to butcher this word, obfuscate. I'm going to butcher it. They basically pull that link into a smaller, simpler version, to where it just says like link/brian.memo.txt, as opposed to and then the applications obviously have more pathing information that connects that true link. So the short answer is it could, The long answer is we'd want to definitely take a look at the data sources. So Stephen, if you want to ping me, post this, and have a specific instance in mind, we'd love to explore that to you. We are, by the way, constantly modifying our base code. We hit the ground running for development and new features every day. And I mentioned, that instance where we evaluated: are we doing this one time in 10 years? Are we doing this 10 times a day? That is what drives our development. So if this is something that the industry is seeing and it's a solution that isn't available out there, oftentimes we'll integrate that into our development cycle, and then we'll assist our partners in solving that problem collaboratively and saying, hey, great, show us the examples. How does this connect? Let's build it into the platform. Now we can do artifact link and analytics in addition to traditional data sources. Great question. So does it show hashes? Sometimes the hash can be corrupted. So we do hash. It admittedly is for internal purposes. So we're generating the MD5, the SHA hashes. We're utilizing, again, those for internal purposes, for deduplication and for other identification processes. I don't know. I don't think we currently display any collected hashes. It just hasn't been requested on the end user component yet. But if that's something, Julie, that is paramount and is needed, I'm sure we can bring that to the forefront to show and even build analytics around those hashes to either verify, as a QC step when they are ingested, or flag in some way. I didn't show it, but for instance, we virus scan. If an item does have a virus, it appears red on the screen. Everything about it screams at you like, hey, this is a virus. And in fact, the system won't even let you download anything to protect you so that you don't infect it. It would be a similar process, I would envision, Julie, and that we could help you pull in those hashes, do verification on it, and then obviously flag that with a true flag and or visual. So as you're going through the data, you can recognize that you have a problem with your hash or not. Excellent. So Megan, that might be our last questions, right?
Yep. There's a question about the PowerPoint file in the handouts tab that I'm trying to troubleshoot, but that's not one that you need to address.
If needed, I can make that into a PDF too, and we can just put a PDF version up there. That would be
delightful.
I can do that. That's an easy fix. I'll post this session. I'll provide that to Megan, and she can get a PDF version up there that can be downloaded.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'll make sure that gets into the on-demand version for this person who's asking. I would love to address you by name, but I'm gonna butcher it, so I'm going to spare you of me butchering that name.
Perfect. The thing, kind of in conclusion here, if we do have questions pop up, great. If we don't, no worries. But the thing that I would encourage, and someone brought it up, there is a trial account specific to Index.io. Go kick the tires with it. Upload forensic data. Upload different data. If you have these Zendesk is what I'm kind of grouping them as, these unique custom sets, reach out to our team. Oftentimes they may be similar enough to something we do support that we can get you across the finish line. And if you talk to any of our forensic partners or law firm partners, they'll all say that support side is a make or break piece for them, and that we're always there in the trenches to kind of help you get through this, because these are modern new data types. We're trying to consistently and steadily attack them and get solutions for them. But it's collaborative, meaning we need the folks that are in the trenches, that are finding this data, that are discovering this data, that are collecting this data. We need their assistance to help us build some of those workflows. And we're always in need of partners that want to keep pushing that capability line. So definitely try it out. It's free trial online. And if any questions post this, feel free to reach me. I think I included my contact information in the PowerPoint slide, as well as some of the other materials that are up there. And yeah, thank you again for everyone's time. It's been great.